Good afternoon. This is another episode in All Men Cry. I have Kevin Bennett, who is the author of Help, a fantastic book that helps people in business. And it will be a great help to people's personal lives in terms of how they manage their mental health and manage their emotions. Good afternoon, Kevin.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Great.
The setup is amazing, and just your professional system and everything. I'm impressed. I love it. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So we have you here
Yes.
because you are a specialist in emotions and mental health. And I was thinking in terms of, in fact, myself and Andre was thinking in terms of how All Men Cry affects mental health, affects emotions, how we show it. And from a professional perspective, someone who's as learned as yourself, who's written a book, who goes out on a daily basis working with people with men who are experiencing their emotions, but show it in different ways, right? So I'm wondering, for you in your professional capacity, how that shows itself. But prior to that, I'd like you to give me a little taster of what's in your book.
Okay, so my book derives from first of all, my experiences, my life experiences, which goes back to Brixton many years ago,
South London.
growing up on, Stockwell Park Estate. And, growing up, experiencing trauma, being stabbed on 4 different occasions, resuscitated one of those times. They didn't think I was going to make it. And then had other traumas where my appendix exploded and once again resuscitated back to life. And then experiencing the death of a child, experiencing my brother got shot and killed, experiencing two of my other siblings dying as well, aneurysm and so on and so forth. And experiencing people around me going through unbearable trauma. Sometimes when you're growing up on an estate and you're naive to what that state exudes. So, for example, you're living on top of trauma. You're living beside trauma. You're living underneath trauma. People all around you are suffering and you can't escape it, especially at a young age when you have no means or finances or currency to move from that environment. So the person that's living next to you is probably being abused in one form or another. The person beside you is come from another country where they've seen, beheadings and all those kind of things. And so it becomes a melting pot of all different types of trauma. And so sometimes getting out of an estate is very hard to do in a sound way. A lot of people carry on and move from that trauma and bring that trauma into their lives as well. So I come from an environment where there was just so much trauma from an age, and trying to make sense of it. And so when I did get into the position to move away from the estate and I started to travel the world, I wanted to understand why my friends were the way they were. Why was I experiencing what I was experiencing? And I traveled to over 25 countries just studying human behavior and looking at different cultures, different mindsets, different behaviors, looking at aristocrats, what made an aristocrat, looking at oligarchs, what made an oligarch, looking at tribes, what made them their tribes, going throughout different parts of the Caribbean and all over the world. And I started to see that there were certain things that people had in common emotionally, feelings-wise, and there's certain ways that people would express it. And so it led me down the garden path to really start to understand how to help build and empower people, first and foremost, for my community. And so I went back to Brixton, I went back to those local areas, I started to do workshops and seminars and talks, helping our people get back to a place of understanding self and enjoying life. And it started to morph. I started to do talks in schools, Then it moved on to universities, companies, organizations, TV, radio, and it just grew and grew and grew. And it led me to writing the book as well, Who Helps the Helpline When the Helpline Needs Help. And one of the reasons why I wrote the book, because I started to see that people that were helping and building and serving others were themselves suffering in silence, suffering to the point where they would, for podcasts' sake, unalive themselves. And I wanted to know, coming from where we come from, we looked at titles as success. But when I got to the end of the rainbow, titles were the reason why people are unaliving themselves. So, for example, I'm hoping they're changing their legislations, etc., now in places like America. But if a physician, a surgeon, an anaesthetist shows that they're going through some form of trauma, they can lose their license.
Right.
So they will suffer in silence in the fear of losing their career, their livelihood, and possibly their family. And so what they would do is go from state to state, looking for therapy but using aliases and paying cash, no digital footprints. And so success can be an amazing thing if success doesn't control you in the name of a title. And that's what's been my main aim, is to go out there and get people to see success as something that's more of a relationship with you, probably yourself, God, and maybe what your family would like to do together instead of what society tells you what success is. And then I started to really look into men and started to see that men suffer in silence more than women do. Us as men are learning very quickly that when we make a mistake in public, we are laughed at, we are ousted, and we become memes. We saw that with Tyrese when he cried. It's just relentless. We've seen that with a lot of our celebrities as men when they cry. And funny, it seems to be black men more.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's a culture thing. It's a culture thing. Certain cultures you're laughed at. It becomes a bit of a joke, because you should be a man. Men don't cry. Be masculine, and they equate masculinity in not all parts of our culture, but most parts of our popular culture. They equate masculinity with a certain type of look, certain type of body build, and a certain type of behavior.
What have you learned is behind that?
It's a multitude of things. I think one of them is that vulnerability is seen as weakness, and unfortunately, people tend to think that crying is a part of vulnerability, where crying is a release. It's a release. You've got inner crying and you've got external crying. And inner cry could be a trauma that needs to be released in one form or way. And you've got, tears, which is another type of release. And so when people cannot, there's a saying, pressure burst pipes.
Yeah.
And when you cannot express what you're going through, then you will explode. When children can't express themselves, they scratch and bite. And when adults can't express themselves, they stab and shoot.
Yeah.
And we need to redefine and change the rules of culture, whatever our culture is.
Yeah.
You've got all different types of cultures.
Yeah, that can be very different.
Yes, got, and you've got countercultures and you've got microcultures, all these different type of cultures within a culture as well, right? You countercultures. And we need to find ways to allow men to express themselves in order for them to be in a real powerful place. You know, because it's not an individual human thing to do to tell someone not to express themselves in the way that we think they should express themselves.
Yeah.
And that's where suffering in silence comes from. Like when people make mistakes in our today's environment, there's a gentleman, I don't want to say his name because I'm really advocating for him, but whoever knows. There was a gentleman who, some years ago, probably about 10 years ago, he made a mistake. It was New Year's. He done a sexual act with a woman on the stairs outside of a club, and it was filmed. Someone filmed it. Every single year from that day, people replay that video again. Every single year.
Yeah.
So that means every single year that man goes through trauma. Every single year he may break up in a new relationship. Every single year his children may look at him and say, "Dad, I can't believe you." Every single year he may be suicidal or have suicidal ideation. All in the name of people's entertainment.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So we're learning very quickly that when we make mistakes in public, we will pay the price for it. And we can never ask people to please have empathy. There was a program by Darren Brown, TV program. You can YouTube it and see. Very, very powerful program. And there was a crowd. So he's got the audience and they all got masks on.
Yeah.
And he gave them directives. So they had a keypad, and the keypad was, press A if you want that to happen, press B, fork in the road kind of thing. And there was a gentleman with his friend. His friend was in on the game. The gentleman wasn't in on the game, right? So the joke's on him.
Yeah.
Right? So he's in a bar, and the audience could choose. Does the woman walk past and spill a drink on him or whatever, or accuse him for, touching her inappropriately?
Yeah.
So the audience was like, yeah, let's choose inappropriate touching, right? So all of a sudden now, she says, "You touched me there," whatever. And he's like, I didn't. So the audience chose, okay, get the boyfriend to come over and kind of thing. So the boyfriend came over. And then he's in more trouble with the boyfriend. I'm just really lightening it, right? And then the next one was, okay, should he leave the club or, So they said, okay, let's leave the club. Then he went into a shop. Should we choose for him to be accused of stealing, or should we choose for him to win a lottery card or so? Once again, the audience with their masks on, they said, let's choose for him to be accused of stealing.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, the audience then came together, a big vote, and they were so happy that he's chosen again for doing something wrong. Okay? And then they said, should we choose for the police to arrest him or the police to let him go? The audience chose once again for the police to arrest him.
Yeah.
So as he's in the van, driving to the police van, now legally they cannot bring him to a police station because that becomes legal.
Yeah.
So they swapped him at the last minute with an actor, right? And so the actor then comes out of the car, tries to run away, and it shows that he's been knocked over by a car.
Yeah.
So while he's being knocked over by a car, the audience in that moment now are crying and they're scared and they're blaming Darren Brown that this is a stupid show. It's a bad show. Now, Darren Brown then switched it back on the audience and said, the actual experiment was on your behavior. In the name of your entertainment, you didn't care what this man was going through.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that happened in the 2011 Mark Duggan riots.
Yeah.
That good people were making bad decisions in the name of crowd participation, crowd entertainment.
Yeah.
And so many good kids on an average day was arrested for crimes they would never ever do in their silo space and moment. So what I'm saying is men are normally attacked in the space of entertainment when it becomes a mass audience thing. And so we as men become we're becoming smarter in not expressing ourselves in public because we know in the name of entertainment we will become a meme like Tyrese.
Yeah. Sorry, Andre has arrived in the house.
Sorry.
How you doing, fam? All right,
Yes.
brother.
Greetings. Thank you. Brilliant.
Let's continue. Let's roll.
So, in terms of because you said a lot, you've experienced a lot. If I'm gonna take this now and say, how do you cry? Because you've had so much go on, right? And your personal experiences have obviously influenced your book. And you've been so many places, you've spoken to so many other people, but how do you cry? Because now you're helping, you're the helper that helps the people who are helping people.
Yes.
So what is your process for managing your emotions, for managing your mental health? Because you've been through stuff that with some people it'll break them.
Yes.
So under those circumstances, how do you process? How do you engage people and say to them, listen, this is what I did, and so this is what I believe is going to be good for you? Because you're a different person still, right?
Sure. I mean, the first part of it is so personal and it's very unique to different people. So I actually talk about it in my book, funny enough, call it the circles of confidence. Okay. So the first circle of confidence is my relationship with God. That's the first circle of confidence. I put a chair in front of me and I just have a conversation with God. And that's why I say it's very personal because some people are non-believers, some people, and so I say, God, this is my problems. I'm taking this to you. So faith is a massive part. What I've realized, the difference between people who tend to have suicidal ideation and people who tend to be stronger is their relationship with God or the lack of.
Yeah.
The second circle of confidence is like to have a therapist, right? Someone who you can talk to without feeling judged. The third circle of confidence is talk to that one friend who gets you. So you may share different things with different circles. As the circle gets wider, you'll be a bit more open because as human beings, we've got three worlds. Our first world is our public world. Our second world is our private world. And our third world is our secret world. And so it's like, who can you share your secrets with?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Because whoever you may share your secrets with, you may not share your privacy with. And what you may share in your private world, you may not share with your public world. And the problem with most people, when they become a bit erratic, they start mixing all the worlds together. And then all of a sudden, they say things that then the public world would then go for their secrets. And then it destroys them. So we have to be very sure, who do we share our secrets with, who do we share our privacy with, and what should we share in public.
Is that a taught just to add, do you believe that's a taught process, or is that something that we indicatively learn as we're going through adolescence, childhood, and pick these sort of circles up? Because I believe a lot of men don't have three circles. I believe some men have maybe two, and some men have one circle where it's just one hat fits all scenarios. This is how I deal with something, and I don't have to be spiritual. I don't have to be friends. I'm just this one entity where I just say, one hat fits all. Do you believe that it's a taught process that we have to go through? Men have to be taught how to have three circles and separate.
Yeah. I think it is a taught process. And I tell you the reason why I say that. Most domestic problems happen when, for example, a man shares something really a secret with his partner and she throws it back in his face.
In
an argument.
Yeah.
And he straight away, because for example, I've worked with clients where, they were molested as a child, right? And he may share that in a vulnerable moment with his partner, his wife, right? This is what happened to me as a child. And in the moment of an argument, she uses it back on him. it could be the other way around, but we're talking about men
Yeah,
in
yeah.
this conversation, right? So it could be the other way around as well. For those people who say, yeah, but men could do it to women, but this is based upon men,
yeah.
right? And in that moment, because he hasn't dealt with that trauma, how he responds, that anchors him to a dark place. And so domestic violence would occur in a moment where he say, I blacked out. And he genuinely did, because the trauma that she threw back at him was so painful and undealt with that it becomes a situation that unfortunately he may do something he cannot turn back around again. So we need to be taught who to share with. Because, and also there's another side of it as well. Some people can't handle the weight of our own traumas. So we need to know, is that person professional enough? Is that person capable enough? Is that person worthy enough? So we need to be taught who to share certain things with in the name of us having the correct process for us to release. And also for the other side who's receiving it, they can be able to handle it and be responsible to feed it back to us as well.
See, because I've seen a lot of your work. Sorry, Gary. I've seen a lot of your work, and your work is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Let's just get that out
Thank
there.
you.
Let's give you the dues where the dues are needed and respected.
Thank you.
I've done a lot of research into you.
Yeah.
And I had to.
Yeah.
Because you're not somebody that's out there, but you're out there.
Right. Yeah.
In terms of, you go on LinkedIn and you're very discreet.
Yeah.
But in the world of books, authors, respected people, the Times say that your book was outstanding. Trustpilot says you're a 4.5. The reviews of people that you've been with, I've looked what you've done in your own area in terms of working with Brixton Soup Kitchen, in terms of collaborating with Dina Cara, different certain people that you've collaborated with in order to bring about this awesomeness in terms of breaking down mental health into a strategic way.
Yeah.
My question to you, how do you break down mental health in a strategic way for the ordinary man?
That's a very, very good question, and I'm trying my best to respect researchers out there, professors and doctors, because they have also their way of doing it. They've got their academic findings and ways, and I've just thrown my hat into the ring, and I'm learning. I'm still learning. I'm planning to go to uni to do my master's and then go and do a PhD, etc., and do a fellowship and some other stuff. So even though I've done it my way, I'm going to go back and reapproach it from an academic perspective as well, just so I can have a rounded view.
Okay.
So I've got to put that disclaimer in place first and foremost, because I don't want it to look like my way is the only way. It's just I'm throwing my hat in the ring. Yeah. So here's my hat in the ring moment. I believe that we're all made from God. Okay. And I believe that God is made out of atoms. Because when we talk about God is everywhere, atoms is everywhere. We're made out of atoms. This microphone's an atom. Our phones are atoms. Inside of an atom, you've got protons, electrons, neutrons, quarks, photons, and so on and so forth, right? But let's talk about three just for a moment. Protons, positive. Neutrons, neutral. Keep the balance. Electrons, negative. Right? What's that got to do with mental health? Everything. Yeah? And then underneath protons, you have what they call the spiritual consciousness of love. Right? It's a consciousness. People tend to think that the opposite of love is hate. It's not. The opposite of love is fear. Right? Now, then
Can you say that again? Because I want people to home in on that one, because that's really a poignant point.
Yeah.
Really home in on that, because I think for our audience, and I think for people out there, they will probably hear that and probably skip past and not really focus on that point. So can you re-elaborate on that point again?
Sure. So you've got, so the consciousness of love, spelled with full capital letters, right? It comes from the energy, a lineage of God down to a proton state, then it becomes a consciousness, it's an energy. So you've got the energy of love, right? And love, think about love being an open flower that you can give and you can receive.
Yeah.
So if a love is an open flower, then something that's opposite must be closed.
Right.
And so the opposite of something that's open is closed. The opposite of love is fear. And fear is our entities. They're closed entities. And every single closed entity comes from a negative lineage of electrons, right? Then then the entities, because it's not a consciousness, they're entities. These entities then come into your life. Could be via family members, it could be via environment, it could be all different things, it could be culture. And those entities are, for example, the fear of criticism or judgment. It's an entity that makes you fearful. The fear of old age, the fear of ill health, the fear of poverty, the fear of death, the fear of failure, even the fear of success. And these, when you think about a negative entity, these entities control your decision making, the way you behave, the way you think. It controls your mental health, right? You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You'll never be successful. And when I work with my clients, every single negative entity controls one singular emotion. It's the emotion of fear. So every single feeling you have that's negative actually derives from fear. Pessimism, fear. Anger, lack of control, fear. Doubt, fear. Depression, fear. Unless it's a certain type of other depression, but depression, fear. Hopelessness, which is hopelessness is connected to suicidal ideation or behavior. Fear. Jealousy, fear. Rage, fear. Doubt, fear. Worry, which is worries connected to the imagination, fear. Frustration, lack of control, fear. Every single negative feeling and emotion derives from fear itself, right? And so fear would make your body become so overwhelmed that it causes inflammation on the brain. Consistent inflammation on the brain causes brain damage. And that is a part of mental challenges and mental health as well. When you can't deal with your problems, which derives from fear, which comes from an electron zone, which comes from entities who come into your life and makes you feel you're not good enough. And that's why I say God has to be number one for me, because I don't turn to no man for justification. So there needs to be something higher than man in order for me not to worship what men, human beings, think about me. Because you're always going to be challenged. Higher the level, bigger the devil. So you will be challenged based upon your ambition and your drive and all the rest of it. And so our mental challenges, our mental health, a lot of the times, if away from it being biological or so, because mental health can actually come from generational trauma as well.
We talked about that and we touched about that on our first podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it can. Bipolar, etc. So you've got different types of depression. You've got 7 to 9 different types of depression that they look at. You've got manic depression, you've got atypical depression, you've got bipolar depression, you've got postpartum depression, you've got all different types of depressions, right? So when we're talking about it from something that's been introduced via other people or a scenario, right? I know people that's had depression because someone beside them died, and they had bipolar after that. So we have to find ways to filter out, and one of the best ways to deal with our psychological challenges is to make sure we deal with it before it metastasizes like a cancer throughout the body, throughout the mind. And trauma are stores in the body. Trauma stores in the body, cells in the body. That's where trauma is stored. This is why sometimes you get neck pains and back pains and all these different type of pains, because trauma's storing in the body. You know, you got physical blunt trauma, then you've got psychological trauma, and it stores in the body. So our mission and our job at all times is to release the trauma, keep releasing it in all different type of ways, talking about it, getting massage, exercising, brisk walking, all these kind of things. But we need to release the trauma, and if we don't, that's when it causes more psychological pain, problems, and challenges as the days go on.
Can trauma be and trauma and fear, can they be good sometimes?
I wouldn't say trauma can be good, but and this could be a challenge. But fear can be good.
I would disagree with you on that. Let's have a. Is there not a thing we could say as positive trauma? So, positive trauma, I believe, is something where you do something indicative, like riding a bike. Can be quite fearful when you first start. You fall off the bike, you get a cut. That trauma of you falling off the bike gives you a cut. You get back up on the bike, you practice again, you fall off, you get up, you practice again. The trauma is every time you've fallen off. Once you've got that grip of it, you're riding. So it's positive trauma.
I probably need to research and look into that, because I'm never going to say that I know enough to say that is good or bad. But what I would probably rebut ever so gently is it's not the trauma that gets us back up on the bike. It's our belief system.
Okay.
It's our belief system. You know, what do we desire more in that moment? The desire to ride the bike or the desire to feel more pain? Because falling off the bike, right, causes pain. So we're not planning to fall off the bike again to feel pain. We're getting back on the bike because we want to feel pleasure. So the trauma is not the end result. It's the desire to feel good is the end result. We tend to fall off the bike and stay off the bike because sometimes the pain is too much and it exceeds the pleasure. And the same thing with relationships. Sometimes people don't want to feel love again because they felt too much pain. So people don't get back into a relationship to feel more pain. They get back in the relationship for the desire to feel pleasure again. It's that nostalgia that we have. And that's why we should have as much experiences as possible in life that makes us feel good, that gives us a desire to do more, that makes us feel good. But we don't do things to feel more pain unless we are going through a type of trauma like self-harm, where we're going through so much psychological pain. We want to bring it into a transition of physical pain so we can make sense of our psychological pain, but we don't necessarily make decisions so we can feel pain and trauma.
I like that.
So that's making the pain tangible.
Yes. So people who tend to self-harm, the pain in their head is so overwhelming that they need to release it by a physical pain so they can make sense of it.
Is that in a sense, people, that's another way in which people cry? Because it's a release?
Yes.
Okay.
Crying is a release. It's like an overload of the body, overload of an experience that is so overwhelming that just need to get it out.
So the self-harming,
Yeah.
in a way, is crying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's the next level of crying because the tears is not enough. And sometimes people can't cry because they have this type of interesting apathy. It's like they're kind of numb in one sense and they need to feel something. And so they may self-harm in those moments just to feel
Something.
Yeah.
To have a sense of an emotion.
Yes.
An emotion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They need to make sense of it.
You mentioned earlier about people's responses to certain scenarios, certain situations. I have a theory which is called ARM, which is an automatic manual response. So we have an automatic manual response to many situations. Do you think that we need to be giving children more of an automatic response to adulthood, like by teaching them about emotions very early, especially young boys? So we should be looking at maybe 10, 11, 12, teaching them about emotions, teaching them it's okay to feel these things. This is how you deal with it. Teaching them about talking and opening up at an earlier age so that counseling, mentoring doesn't become something that's a myth that now I have to talk to somebody.
Sure.
What's your opinion on that?
I think it should be younger. Developmental trauma tends to happen between 0 to about 6 to 8 years old. And the problem, a massive problem with developmental trauma is exactly what it says on the tin. It's developmental trauma. So that means the brain is still forming. And when that type of trauma sets in on the brain, it's pretty much like brain damage. It's very hard to repair because the brain was forming in the time of that trauma. So children needs coping mechanisms and understanding of self from as early as you can provide it to that child. Or it may be, it's a bit like there's YouTube videos about how to be a billionaire, but how many of us have been billionaires from those videos? So you can teach someone something over and over again, but if they don't have the true experience and skills to deal with it, it can just be another education, but yet they still in the place of psychological, emotional poverty.
I like the way he uses words.
Mm-hmm.
He's a wordsmith. He's a wordsmith. You know, he adds poverty to the end of it, so people understand the magnitude of it.
Mm-hmm.
How you been, Gal?
I'm good. I'm good. We've been having a good conversation, and I'm thinking about the ways in which how we cry, and the different environments that we can be in, and how that impacts the way we cry, how we deal with emotion, how we now teach the next generation how to manage emotions. The last thing that was going through my mind.
So can we do a slight divide? I apologize. There's a slight difference between emotions and feelings as well.
Absolutely.
Of course, 100%. Yeah, we know that.
So because a lot of people kind of sometimes merge the two together. Because a lot of times, you know, emotions are bodily. It's in our viscera. It's in our blood. It's in our blood pressure, etc. Where feelings could normally come from thoughts.
That's right.
You know, so you've got moods, you've got affectiveness, you've got emotions, and you know. You've got so there's different types. So sometimes we just need to clear it for people.
Yeah, no, we have to break it down because, you know, I used a term I think this week where I said on my status, I'm emotionally unavailable. And when I said that, that carried so much weight for people that they fully understood what I was talking about.
Yeah,
that where I'm not there to just be picked up and put down and to be thrown away and to be used when you want. You know, a company calls you up last minute, something's going wrong, can you sort it out? No, I'm not available. I'm not available to be used as a yo-yo. And I think a lot of men get used emotionally like that because we are vulnerable to that, because we are helpers. The makeup of a man is to help, is the maker, to make things happen, to develop and to design. So when we do those things, we, as I say, an automatic male manufactured response would be, that's broken, how can I fix it? You know,
powerful.
Do we respond then, or do we react?
We should be responsive.
We should, but with so much emotion that is kind of allowed to be raw, do we place the emotion where it needs to be in order that we can respond, as opposed to just jumping and it's just quick smart?
Here's the thing, we all should have emotions, but we shouldn't be emotional.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So and to me, the way how I see emotion, an emotional, or no, let me rephrase that. The way how I see a reaction is purely based on the emotion.
Being emotional.
Yeah. Right. Whereas when we respond, we allow ourselves to feel the emotion. We allow ourselves to be emotional, and then we allow ourselves to think about how we want to engage after we've had all of these,
Yes.
right? And I find maybe today we're being more emotional
Yeah.
and reacting
Yeah.
rather than responding.
Yes.
Is so in your
And I think that's the difference between leadership as a man and being a follower as a man. Because the most power you think about, for example, not choosing any sides there, but you think about a Putin, for example, right? Putin, can say I'm allowed to be emotional, but he's not. That's why he's one of the scariest leaders in recent history, because as much as he's being attacked, he's very, very strategic. He's not emotional.
right,
Even when, because think about it, to be a world leader, what does that look like? You have to sit down with enemies that want you dead.
yeah,
And you've got to still play poker.
yeah,
And you've got to still negotiate. And you still have, there's many things. Now, how many men in jail do you know are in jail because they are leaders or they were emotional, which means they were followers. They are, they're idol worshippers. Because an idol worshipper worships someone else's directives or behavior, right? You're idol worshipping me. So if I can get you to be emotional, I'm your God. I control you. Do you understand what I'm saying? So to truly be a man who can lead the world, you cannot be emotional, but you're allowed to have emotions.
yeah,
And the men who are emotional are at best part dead or in jail.
Oh, wow. Are you going there? Are you going there?
I mean, most of those men can tell you. Ask them, if you say to them, let's have a realistic, honest conversation. Why are you here today? And they'll say, because I was really upset and this person done this and I reacted. Okay, how many years you're doing? 35 years.
question then, others making music,
Sorry?
others that some of them who are not in jail
Yeah.
or who are not dead, they're making music.
I mean, all different types of people are making music.
Because there's been so many occasions I'm listening to what people are hearing through their music. I'm like, hold on. The young people who you are talking to are actually you're treating them like they're your therapist, because you're hearing all this stuff because you want to get it out. You're basically crying down the microphone, and the people who are listening and will come to your concerts and scream your name are kids.
Yep.
All too often they're kids. And even when they're so-called grown people, mentally they're kids because they hang on your words so much. But what you're doing with your words is actually having a therapy session.
Yeah, so that's such a good point. Now, a part of trauma, trauma and going to prison has very similar traits in a sense. Like, when the day your trauma kicks in is the day you stop maturing. So there's a lot of adults who are 30, probably 40, who are still 9 years old on the microphone in a studio because they are still expressing their trauma at their psychological, emotional age, even though they may be 40 years old.
Right.
And this is the downside of access to all. Very, very controversial view. But the downside to access to all means social media and having followers and all the rest of it is hurt people are leading hurt people.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it causes a generation of brokenness and hurt, which then causes generational traumas and generational pain. And that's why we're seeing such an pandemic of knife crime.
Right.
Because it's very much trauma-led.
Because they're imploding on themselves, right?
Of course.
Yes.
Because they can't reach out and do anything. So they're just exploding in their own communities.
Yes, exactly. They're metastasizing. So, for example, when you look at it, there's so many children from different parts of the world where they saw in their village parents, family members being beheaded and so on and so forth. And then they're brought over to the UK with no proper therapy. And then they're let out into a community. And then all of a sudden, electron sees electrons, misery loves company, frequency loves frequency. And they start to merge together. And all of a sudden, that becomes an estate where the trauma lives on top of you, beside you, below you, beside you, you know.
Because
I have a question, actually. Would you say that, because you just brought up generational trauma, right? Would you say that the traumas that have arisen because of slavery, that have arisen because of colonization, and this isn't just on the side of the black people, this is on the side of the white child of the slave master who used to play with the slave who's now hanging from a tree, right? Would you say that those traumas are now, we're seeing how that's all playing out in today's society, where today's society seems to be really struggling, especially as a result of the economic downturns and as a result of COVID, for instance, right? So, because I'm looking and I'm thinking, it doesn't matter which part of the world you're in, but everybody seems to be really struggling, whether it be financially, mentally, emotionally. There's a huge struggle going on now. Where, I mean, all right, I'm married 19 years this year, and whilst it's a lot of work to make that continue to happen and be happy in it, me and my wife, I think we're doing a great job. But I noticed that 70%, I think it was, that I heard yesterday, 70% of marriages are now ending in divorce.
Yeah.
I have a theory behind that. Because there is no substance behind marriage anymore. There is no meaning to marriage. In the world that we live in today, everything is fast goal, fast alternatives. So, for example, I work with a range of individuals and I look at the power of the internet. So, for example, everybody talks about AI and how powerful AI is, but people not understanding how powerful AI is. In terms of AI then describes you more than you know you. In terms of your patterns of your life, the times you use your phone, the things that you do, the things that you view, overview, understand. So, for example, if you look in the world right now, if you look at marriages is something that's seen to be kind of restrictive, old school, under control. If you are in a marriage, you should be living the life of a queen. You should be having all these faculties, the money, the house, the royalties. Now, if you're a man that wants to marry a woman now sometimes, because of the way of the world, you must meet certain criterias to marry her. So no longer was it making an honest woman of her. It is now, do you have the financial funds to give me the lifestyle I want? Number two, do you have the social preference that I can relate with that's going to esteem my social preference to another social level? For example, people in the rich, in the world of the famous, can't go out with Tina from Greg's because Tina from Greg's don't cut it in that world. Even though Tina from Greg's could be the greatest person, the loveliest person, but socially, that profile doesn't meet the profile that we should have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of two different questions. And what you said is so powerful. And you're right, I agree with you. I think going back to when we were talking about generational trauma that's passed down by the oppressed and the oppressor, I'm still learning that now. I was actually at UCL at a talk a few days ago and they was actually talking about it. So I'm learning about it. So I don't want to kind of talk about the findings yet because I haven't factualized it yet. But there is definitely some coalition there. What you've said is there is something there, and it still is being passed down on both sides. You know, there is a race thing, there's a cultural thing when it comes to trauma that's passed down through the generations. You know, there's a thing called mature imagery and immature imagery. And mature imagery is when you look at yourself and you can see what you look like to other people. So, for example, a mature imagery would be, I'm a black man and I get in the lift with, for example, a white woman, and I recognize how she may look at me. So my behavior in that moment may be more accommodating to her because I don't want her to feel
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've been there.
uncomfortable. Do you
Been
understand what I'm
there so
saying?
many times.
So you have maturity about your imagery. Then you've got immature imagery. And immature imagery is when you have no clue about how the world looks at you. You don't have no clue. You're in such a bubble. You're in a silo. And so a lot of, for example, white people will have that about them, you know, and that's the generation. That's a small, very small part of the generational trauma that passes down. That we're still mindful about how we have to change our voice to be around other people. Because hello, my name is, right, and yo, wagwan brethren. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Because we're always adjusting ourselves because we have an understanding of how we should look and sound around different people. And so that is passed down through time, right? And that needs to change.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, that needs to change. And then, as I said, the immature imagery is when you have no clue because you don't need to change. You can be you at all times because no matter where you go, you always qualifies. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then there's a whole problem that goes with both sides. So that's a part of the generational thing that's happening. Even our children are learning to switch up in certain environments. So it's being passed down over and over again. To answer the other question, the second part of the question is culturally, we are introduced into a new culture of what qualifies for a relationship, and it doesn't work. Once again, the culture is now being led by hurt people. And those hurt people hasn't worked out the solution of what happiness is because they're hurt. You can't be hurt and happy at the same time. So we're being led as a culture by the loudest, empty barrels make the most noise. And so when you think about these people that are setting the terms for what relationships are nowadays, they're hurt people. And so we have to go back to nature in order to truly make sense of what connection, love, romance, understanding, bonding, and servitude is towards God and our relationships as well. Do you understand what I'm saying? So when we're getting into a relationship, like if you go back to the war, for example, right? First, Second World War. Why were people together? People were together. One or two of the reasons where people were together because there was a commonality in the future together. There was an agreement on the future. I keep you safe and you keep me certain. So women want security, men want certainty.
Oh, I see.
Right? So women want to know you're going to keep me secure innately. Men want to know when I come home to you, do I still have the same woman that I tapped into? Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, this is why women still ask for security, but women are not providing certainty. Because, and then there's new terms and conditions of what security looks like. And men hasn't defined what certainty looks like. They're still figuring it out because there's a lot of pain going on. And that's what I'm saying. We need to go back to the origins of what works in relationships and what a relationship actually means. A relation is when two or more, but let's stick with two come together. A ship is a voyage.
Yeah.
A ship is an adventure together.
They're going on a journey.
Yeah, they're going on a journey together. So most people don't understand that there's a relation that needs to come together, which means commonalities, understanding, a connection via God, whatever it may be. And then there's a journey, a voyage, an adventure that needs to happen. And that adventure needs different parts of the ship to be manned. It needs the rower to keep the ship going, right? It needs this person as a sail, and the sail's normally God, right? and then you have someone who's steering the ship as well, and so on and so forth, and someone that if there's a hole in the ship, they can repair it. So there's a village that actually makes a relationship work, not just two people, and the village needs to be on point.
Under those circumstances, as you said, the sail is God.
Yeah.
So for those who don't believe that we have a maker,
They are normally ones that struggle in life overall. And so I'm not here to convince people who they should pray to, if they should pray to someone, because that's a whole nother world, and I'm not invested in there. But what my research has taught me, that people who are normally non-believers normally struggle in life.
It's even said in Maslow's theory. Maslow's theory breaks it down.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, when people get to self-actualization, that's where they begin to understand the spiritualities. Hence why people are now meditating and doing more.
Yeah.
So we're having to wrap up now.
Yes.
And sorry, guys, I was late
cool.
again. This is
you.
This was absolutely awesome. I want to thank you, Gary, for organising it. Kevin, thank you very much.
I appreciate you.
Wanted to shout out to IMD, which is International Men's Day. These are some of the people here. There's one other person that's going to be there, which is AJ. We're forming together a men's group, a men's networking group. We're forming this to push and allow men to have a safe space to come, have conversations like this, a safe space where you can network, a safe space where you can feel empowered. I believe in empowerment. You believe in manifestation, and you definitely believe in help and the psychological breakdown of help. And AJ does the music. So if you look at those facets all together, you have a kind of a holistic approach that we're going to be bringing. So I want to thank you all once again.
Yep.
This was All Men Cry.
Yeah,
This is, listen, who needs the help when the help line
turn it
needs
on.
help? Turn it around, turn it around. Yeah,
Who helps the helpline when the helpline needs help? You can get it on
now.
Amazon.
Yeah, get it on Amazon. You know, I'm going to be purchasing that book in a moment.
Thank you.
And
this is a book that is going to help you with your business, it's going to help you with your personal life,
Yes.
and it's going to help you, as I love to look at things, find some peace, which is
Thank you.
really, really important for all of us. When we have peace, we have community, we have everything we can possibly desire, in my opinion.
Brilliant.
one more time, International Men's Day, coming out to you November the 17th. Look out for it. It's going to be a black tie event. You're going to see more people like Kevin Bennett, Mr. Gary here, myself, Andre, thanking you.
You did not what is your company called?
EMPMAX, EMP, as you can see.
And what
Always
do you
publicity.
do?
Empowering people to maximize lives. We do this through coaching, mentoring, using NLP, using words of language, thought process, and breaking it all down.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. Once again, take care, fans.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Thanks.
you.